Good evening. Welcome to Hudson Alpha's virtual 2020 Gala. I love our annual galas, and I regret that I will not have the chance to spend time with you, each of you, tonight. Regardless, I want to thank you very much for participating in this virtual gala and for your amazing support over all these years. My grandmother survived the Spanish flu and forever lived in fear of it coming back. In her home of South Pittsburgh, Tennessee, much of the population did not survive. In fact, as a young teenager, Granny lost every one of her closest friends. We are now in the grips of a pandemic that could be even worse than the Spanish flu. I never truly understood my grandmother's fear until now. Thankfully, we are blessed by the past 100 years of science. In 1918, they didn't know that the flu was a virus. Face masks were not invented. Social distancing meant literally boarding infected families up in their homes. When Lonnie and I conceived of Hudson Alpha, it was to use genomic research, entrepreneurship, and education to help solve life's most important issues. Tonight, you will hear how this vision is being applied to COVID-19, among others. Some really great things are happening here on the Hudson Alpha campus. Together with your support, we are all working hard to make Lonnie proud. Thank you for participating in tonight's event.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Herman, Director of External Relations at Hudson Alpha. On behalf of the Hudson Alpha Foundation, welcome to the 13th Annual Spring Benefit. It seems strange to have a spring benefit in August, but because of COVID-19, we're all doing things a little differently now. Your health and safety are very important to us, so for this very unique year, we're hosting the 2020 Spring Benefit as a virtual event. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to our wonderful sponsors for making this evening possible. Because of your support, the Spring Benefit will raise awareness and important funding for Hudson Alpha's work on the COVID-19 coronavirus. We appreciate how our sponsors stuck with us when we postponed the event from April to August and then made it virtual. They have been wonderfully supportive and encouraging, and we are deeply grateful. I especially want to recognize and thank our genome level sponsors, Adtran and Intrepid, our discovery level sponsors, Bradley Arand and Morgan Stanley, the Shields Group, and our DNA level sponsors, Aviagen and John and Lynn Cook and the Cook Museum. I would also like to thank our premier level sponsors as well as our Friends of the Institute sponsors. This evening would not be possible without their generous support. Many of our sponsors also donated their spring benefit dinners to healthcare workers at Huntsville Hospital. Delicious meals prepared by the Jackson Center were delivered a few weeks ago to Huntsville Hospital and enjoyed by nurses, physicians, and other frontline caregivers who are working tirelessly to keep our community safe and healthy. On behalf of everyone at Hudson Alpha, thank you to the brave men and women in the healthcare field for all that you're doing, and thank you to our sponsors for their generosity. In just a minute, you will hear how the Hudson Alpha campus has responded to the global pandemic. During the event, if you have questions, please text them to 883-350-0884. We will make every effort to text you back and provide an answer. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Rick Myers, President and Science Director and the M.A. Loya Chair in Genomics at Hudson Alpha.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Welcome, everyone. I'm sorry we can't meet in person, but I'm here to tell you about work that is going on here on our campus, mostly having to do with COVID tonight, and I'll tell you some of the other work that we're doing as well. So the first thing that's important is our major efforts are to make sure our employees and their families are safe, and that means taking a lot of precautions. So we're doing all sorts of things on our campus to do our best to keep everyone safe. So one of those is we have temperature measuring devices that you can measure when you first walk in. We have lots of places where you can both sterilize your hands and wash your hands as well. Lots of signage and many, many other things as well. The other thing is that we are absolutely insisting that everyone wears a mask when they're on our campus and in our building, when they're nearby other people. Clearly, if they go into their offices or in places where they're not next to people, we are allowing that. We also are very stringent about social distancing. This really does help. The combination of masks and staying apart from each other and spending as little time as possible really close to each other makes a huge difference. So we're still able to do things in our laboratories, but we're doing this in a way where we are able to keep social distancing, and part of that is doing remote work for as much of as possible. And the HudsonAlpha employees themselves, about half of them, or even a little more than half of them, are able to accomplish their work at home. It's not always easy for parents, as you might imagine, but we are able to still accomplish a lot for people who are doing work that doesn't require being physically on campus. Many people still do need to be on campus, so we're doing as much as we can. We call it platooning, where people come in at different scheduled times, and that's helped a whole lot to minimize the amount of contact that people have to have, physical contact. I will say that HudsonAlpha is doing a fair number of COVID projects itself, as well as our usual work. And a lot of those COVID projects are done in collaboration with our associate companies. We have 45 associate companies. They're amazingly productive and really important colleagues for us as well. And quite a few of those companies, in fact, a lot of them, are doing COVID work themselves. So I'm going to tell you about both of the groups. I'm going to tell you about the projects that both of the groups are doing. So let me just say one thing first about COVID itself. So let's just keep straight that the virus itself that causes COVID is called SARS-CoV-2. In fact, we had a SARS-1 in 2003. This is a second coronavirus that's been, you hear the word novel. It's a new coronavirus that's particularly insidious, and that's why it's caused this pandemic. COVID-19 is actually the name of the disease. This is the symptoms that are caused in lots of people that cause disease, and that is called COVID-19 because it first arose in 2019. Now, we're doing many things to try to help stave off this pandemic, and a lot of those have to do with work that we're doing here, but also information. So this is at least one place where we are on our website trying to help keep the public in the know, and you'll hear a lot more about this from Dr. Neil Lamb. So let me tell you about some of the projects, not all of them, that some of our companies are doing. So the first thing that is important in the disease in general is, how do you detect the virus? This is virus testing to see whether someone is infected or not. And as you know, this is really important for knowing and understanding when and where people are being infected, so that we can both separate people from each other and also to help take care of them. So actually, I'm showing 4 of our associate companies are doing major things in the testing arena. Really exciting. Diatherix is one company that is doing more than 10,000 tests a day. This is more than many, many other groups around the country are able to do. This has been really, really important. But several of the other companies are doing this in various venues for different reasons as well. That's really important for us. IQBate, for instance, is working with a couple of our hospital systems here and elsewhere. iRepertoire is doing testing. And Kylos Genetics, one of our associate companies, is doing pooled testing, which is a very interesting way to think about how we might get back to work or back to normalcy during this epidemic and afterwards. Another area that is really important is developing treatments. So you hear about vaccines. We're not working on vaccines directly, but which are really, really important. But meanwhile, can we have something that will actually help to make either the symptoms go away or be at least a lot less severe? So at least one of our groups is working on this, led by Dr. Jen Han. You will hear from Dr. Han a little later. He's a HudsonAlpha faculty member, but also a founder of several of our biotech companies. And one of those, iRepertoire, or IREP, has not just working on, but has already identified what we call neutralizing monoclonal antibodies. These are antibodies that could be used for treatment. We're working closely with Huntsville Hospital on this project. It's been a wonderful collaboration with them, and we're trying to work on ways of getting these into clinical trials. So that's a really important part of the whole epidemic problem as well. Another one of our companies is called Discovery Life Sciences. Is actually now called HudsonAlpha Discovery. And HudsonAlpha Discovery is doing a lot of different things. One of the things that is really important is they're providing researchers all over the world with biosamples, meaning specimens of biosamples, sometimes from postmortem tissues, from other tissues, from blood, around the world for doing COVID research. This is a really hard problem from researchers to actually try to understand the virus, understand why it causes the symptoms that it does, and all the other things about the virus that's important. And so this has been a major thing for them to contribute to the whole world. Another area that they're also working on on testing, but for the virus itself. But actually, what they're really working on is in a nationwide group to develop technologies to make testing better, faster, easier, and also sharing those approaches with people all over the country and all over the world. Another one of our companies, called Prozone, is working on air quality. This turns out to be a really important part of this pandemic, which is if you're in enclosed buildings, enclosed rooms, the way that the air moves, et cetera, is really important for removing the virus as someone who's infected has been in that room. And so this is one of the sort of different approaches that we love, that our companies have all these different technologies, and a lot of engineering goes into these kinds of things. So those are just a handful of the many companies that are working on COVID-related projects. So let me now tell you about a few projects that are going on with Hudson Alpha employees ourselves, our faculty members in our labs. And I will say that many of the projects that I just talked about and other ones with the associate companies, we're also helping with those in various ways. But let me tell you about a few of these, because I think they're very interesting. So one of the big problems with this disease is that we don't understand why some people get really sick, some people don't get symptoms at all, and then some people get intermediate symptoms. So why is that the case? And we are almost certain that genetics has to play a role in that. You might remember Hudson Alpha is really good at genomic sequencing. So these two faculty members, Greg Cooper and Greg Barsh, are leading a project to sequence the genomes of people who have been sick with COVID, and some who've had severe symptoms, some with medium symptoms, some with very mild symptoms. And if we can understand in the genome the differences between those individuals, if there are genes that make them more or less susceptible, that could be really, really important in helping to develop treatments, to understand it better, to know what we need to do on an almost personalized level for individuals who have the disease. Another big area is, can we test your blood after you've been infected with SARS-CoV-2 and maybe had symptoms or maybe didn't? Can we test your blood for antibodies to see if you have immunity to it? We don't really know the answer to this yet. There are a lot of tests available. Some of them were inaccurate at first. They probably are accurate now, but we don't know whether everyone who has antibodies is going to really be immune or not. Nevertheless, we need to have methods for being able to test those. And so we're working on, with collaborators at New York University, my very good friend Dan Littman and his postdoctoral fellow and a senior scientist in my lab are working on trying to develop a high throughput test so that we can test for immunity and use that hopefully in the not too distant future. So another interesting and maybe surprising project is that we started establishing this project that a few other cities around the world are using, and that's they're testing wastewater for the presence of the virus. It's actually not live virus, it's the leftover pieces of the virus after it goes through our wastewater system. And we're hoping to work with our cities around here, as well as possibly throughout the state, to do this. And it's remarkable how sensitive the technologies are that do work to be able to do this. So we're setting up this project now. Carter Wells and two folks in my lab are working hard on getting this project going as well. We're very excited about the possibility. And the idea there is that you can watch and you might know for several days ahead of the appearance of symptoms whether you're going to get a spike or not. As you know, we're in pretty dire straits right now in Madison County and throughout the state. We hope that that will go down, but being able to test and be able to test for the quantity of virus in our wastewater system could be very, very valuable for giving heads up to the medical workers and to the city and others as well. There's another area that we just started this project, and Dr. Jane Grimwood, one of our faculty members who's an expert in DNA sequencing. Here we're talking about sequencing the viral genome from people who have been infected. So the virus genome is really tiny compared to the human genome. So in one sequencing run, you can probably do 10,000 samples, but we're not going to collect that many. The idea is to try to collect samples. This is a project that is being led by the CDC. It's called the SPHERES project, and it can be really valuable for knowing where the virus came from, how it's mutating, how it's changing. That's one of the real problems with any kind of viral disease, especially, to know how much it's changing as it's being transmitted from one person to another and throughout a population. So really important thing to do, and it's not being done with samples from the Southeast yet. And so we're very eager to be the participant to contribute to that, and it's a countrywide and really worldwide sharing of all those data so that we can try to understand this on a global level. So I told you about work that we're doing in COVID, both in HudsonAlpha and with the companies, and some of those, as I said, are being done together. Now, we did have to slow down a lot of our research, but we didn't stop. And these diseases we work on and the other problems in sustainable agriculture don't stop just because of a virus. So we're doing our best to keep those projects going. And because of our safety measures, we think we're doing this well, albeit a little bit slower. And so I want to just tell you, just to remind you what we do. So we have massive projects, multiple laboratories working at HudsonAlpha, and lots of people working on neurodegenerative diseases and psychiatric diseases in humans. So this is diseases of the nervous system, and these are really important. Alzheimer's, ALS, there are really a dozen diseases that we're working on, and many, many different parts of that. Another area that is really important to us is the Smith Family Clinic. This is a clinic led by Dr. David Bick and a whole team of people who see patients, a lot of children, but also a lot of adults who come in because they have some symptoms, some disease that is undefined. That's sadly a very common thing to happen. And so we set up the clinic to do this. David and his team see patients who come in, determine if they would benefit from sequencing their whole genomes, and then the HudsonAlpha infrastructure for DNA sequencing then looks at those, and this has made a huge difference on hundreds who've come into the clinic to be able to have that done. Another area is our genomic health program. This is led by Dr. Devin Absher, also by Elaine Lyon. David Bick participates in this, and many others do as well. And this is a whole variety of programs to actually try to bring genomic sequencing and all the other technologies into the clinic where people can actually benefit from this. So we're working with groups, hospital groups in South Alabama and various other places. One of the ones that was just recently announced is a big project done with the Muskogee Creek Nation in Oklahoma, and it's a project to actually work with their physicians to help the health of their population. We continue to work on cancer in a lot of different projects. Dr. Sarah Cooper has been leading the Information is Power project, which is free genomic testing and as well, or reduced costs for others as well, but free genomic testing for breast and ovarian cancer and actually a lot of other cancers as well. This has been a really powerful project, and we're trying to expand this throughout North Alabama. It's been very, very successful. But that's not the only thing that we're doing in cancer. We're doing lots of research to understand the causes of cancer, what we can do about it, being able to detect it early for quite a number of different cancers. Another area that's a really exciting one that we do this in collaboration with the University of Alabama in Birmingham, and others contribute to this as well, is called the AGHI, and it's the Alabama Genomic Health Initiative. And this is actually looking at genes in people in all 67 counties of Alabama, and that means sometimes sequencing their whole genome, but also looking at a more refined way so that we can do a lot more. This has been really valuable for a research project. It's been a great infrastructure, and it's helped us a lot in some of our other projects as well. Then another project that I just absolutely love is led by Dr. Greg Cooper, Greg Barsh, several others, including people at UAB. And that is, we call it SouthSeq, and it's actually now sequencing the genomes from 1,500 babies in the neonatal intensive care cancer units in different locations. So those are in 4 different states. 6 sites now. We're hoping to open up additional sites, and this is making a huge difference for some of these babies. They come in when they're born. They're in the neonatal intensive care unit. We often have no idea what's wrong with them, and very quickly being able to sequence their genomes has helped in a lot of cases to try to figure out what's wrong, and sometimes leads to ability to do something about it. And finally, I'm going to tell you about something that you will hear a lot more about. It's our agri-science program, Sustainable Agriculture Plant Genomics program. We have 5 faculty members now. We had 3 for a while, and these last 2 gentlemen joined us right as COVID hit, but they're here and they're working hard on a whole variety of programs that have to do with improving crop yields, improving resistance to diseases, which is really important in agriculture. We really need to improve yields because we're essentially worldwide out of arable land. So we need to get more from that land, and we need to take better care of that land. So we're doing lots and lots of projects in this group. It's very exciting. I can't count the number of different organisms that they're working on, but many of them are, most of these have to do with things that are economically really important, and where we attack the particular problems that they're having in those. In peanut, for instance, making them resistant to the diseases that attack peanut. There literally have been more than 120 different crop plants that the genomes have been sequenced by this group, and work being done on them. Not in a vacuum. They're also working with the breeders and the groups around the world, and a lot in the Southeast, to help solve these problems. So that's a handful of the things that we're continuing to do in spite of COVID, and we will keep doing these and keep you apprised of those. And I appreciate you listening. Now, I'd like to introduce one of my heroes, Dr. Neil Lamb, who's going to tell you about our education outreach program, and in particular, how that's making a big difference in COVID as well. Neil.
Thanks, Rick. Good evening, everyone. It's safe to say that the SARS-CoV-2 virus has become the most studied and certainly the most reported microbe on the planet. It's changed the landscape of everything, including the language we use. Case in point, look at these words. I'm willing to bet that you've heard every single one of these words and probably even used several of them yourself in the last few weeks. Now compare that to your usage in, say, December of 2019. I'm willing to bet you didn't use any of these. The education team didn't use any of these either. So it has been a huge transition and shift for all of us. And on that note, I want to say a special word of thanks to the team that I am privileged to work with, the Education and Outreach Group. literally hours after we sent everyone home to work remotely, they started talking to me about how we could begin to build resources to equip educators and students who were also now learning from home. Within days, they had taken a set of our resources, modified them, revised them, and adjusted them to support educators in a remote learning environment and put them online at Learning Together Apart 2020. It's actually a pretty appropriate phrase for everything that we've been doing since then. When it became painfully apparent, and I mean painful, that summer was going to have to become virtual, this team had one focus: how to create meaningful experiences with whatever it took to give learners the content that they needed. As a result, we reached everything from elementary to senior citizens. A set of science shorts that let students from their house with things they already had explore the wonder of science. We had over 150 educators that came to our workshops this summer, many of them not only from outside Alabama across America, but actually from countries around the globe. We ran a whole series of seminars and Q&A sessions and interactive activities for adults. We continued our patient education and our patient portal materials and for our healthcare workers. And we had 50 students that were in internships or multi-week skill building activities and programs that they, at home, received a set of skills that they need to equip themselves for the workforce. We mailed materials. We had students meet us in the parking lot and provided them materials. I cannot tell you how incredibly proud I am of this dedicated group of individuals who said, pandemic or no, we are going to have an impactful summer for an incredible audience of learners. I'd be incredibly remiss, though, if I didn't send a shout out to all the other groups across the Institute that helped make this summer possible. From the incredible work of our communications team, to our facilities and shipping, receiving, and accounts payable groups, to all the folks in the research labs and in the associate companies that gave up some of their time to jump onto a Zoom call and have a conversation with students or teachers or the public. We could not have done this summer without you, and I am incredibly grateful. So now we'll take a little bit of a break and catch our breath, and then we'll jump into fall. Some of our programs will go on hold for the year. Many will move online. And we actually have a handful of workforce programs that we will bring on campus in person with the new norms of face coverings and physical distancing. Regardless, our twin goals of genomic literacy for citizens and building the workforce skills of tomorrow's worker will continue. Now, there's another education project that's become near and dear to me over the course of the pandemic. Since mid-March, we've created a set of educational videos at Beyond the Blog that explore the science of COVID-19 in everyday language. They were supposed to be 4 to 6 minutes, but I talk a little long, so they're really more like 7 to 10 minutes. 40 videos watched by over 70,000 viewers. Many of you have told me how useful you find these and that you share them with your family and friends. Thank you. We'll keep making them, so you keep sharing them. Now, I'm in front of a camera with a whiteboard. I can't resist the urge to just slide in a mini Beyond the Blog video. I promise. It'll be quick. I'm not going to talk about the curve or about the difference between antivirals and antibodies, but I am going to talk about 6 key questions that we still need to answer to better understand the pandemic. We've talked about early science from many of these, but I want you to think of this as a preview of coming attractions. These are videos that I hope to make in the near future because the science will have advanced enough that I can tell you that we now know the answers. They run the gamut from exactly how the virus spreads, the specific details, and why some people are more likely to spread it than others, to a real key question: why does the variation in severity, why is that so wide? And what specific immune function do we really need to understand to know who has protection and who doesn't? And then questions about effective therapies and when we'll have a globally available vaccine. Stay tuned. I know science. I know that science will continue to move forward, and I know that we'll have these answers. I've said it before, and I'll say it now. We will science our way through this pandemic. And that's a great transition for our next speaker tonight, Dr. Jin Han. Dr. Han really needs no introduction. He was one of the earliest faculty researchers to come to HudsonAlpha, and his area of expertise is in understanding the immune system, how it works, and how we can actually develop tools that let us see what the immune system is doing at any moment in time and how healthy it is. I know that you're going to enjoy what he has to say. So with that, Jin, I'll toss it over to you.
Thank you, Neil, for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jin Han. I'm a faculty investigator at HudsonAlpha Institute, but also a founder of two biotech companies on campus, iCubate and iRepertoire. I joined HudsonAlpha after we sold our first company and after actually SARS outbreak. SARS changed my life. We had the first company and developing diagnostic for infection, for genetic disease, and all of a sudden SARS hit. We quickly turned our technology and focus to develop a 10 pathogen panel, not only detect SARS, but other virus, bacteria cause SARS-like symptoms. And that got other companies, including CDC's attention. We did a large clinical study and collaboration with CDC. We developed a respiratory panel, HPV panel, staph panel, and so the company got acquired by a German company. Then I joined HudsonAlpha Institute, but every time there's an outbreak, you may remember H1N1, H5N1, H7N9, Zika virus, Ebola, we all joined in and developed assays. The H1N1 outbreak, I still remember, at Diatherics, we developed the assay and run more than 30,000 patients. And when we run the first 10,000, we wrote a paper. We find out when there's an outbreak, only 1/3 of the patients actually have H1N1. Rest has something else. And it wouldn't be nice to diagnose you are not having H1N1 or you are not having COVID, you are having something else. So that is the advantage of our technology called multiplex PCR technology. And that's still being used by Diatherics, still in this building. Last time I checked, they are running average 10,000 samples a day to diagnose COVID. So this time, when COVID hit, we quickly joined the fight, and we collaborated with international scientists from China, from Japan, from Portugal, to sequence the 10 patients of COVID-19 patients. Sequence not their genome, but their what we call immune repertoire. It's their T cell, B cells that generating antibodies. And we sequenced them at the beginning of the onset of the disease, a few days later, and when they recovered. But before that project, last year at HudsonAlpha at iRepertoire, we studied 7 individuals in our company, injected ourselves with a flu vaccine, regular flu vaccine. And before the vaccine, we already get the blood. And the day 1, day 3, day 7, day 14, day 21, we got the blood again. We sequence the T cell, B cell, and we identify those T cell, B cells. Around day 7, there's a huge peak generating antibodies. So we know when to look at, how to look at these cells that responding to a viral antigen. We apply those filters to these COVID patients, and we identified a group of B cell antibodies that made by the patients contribute to their recovery. And we made them synthetic beast antibodies, grow them in larger quantities so we can do deeper study and study their effect. We actually already got the data showing they are neutralizing antibodies, meaning they can block the entry of virus. This technology already being used at NIH 2 years ago, and it developed a malaria vaccine. So this technology is matured, but and that's why I'm quite confident and optimistic that during the COVID-19, not only us, there are so many scientists with better technologies, better equipped than 10 years ago during the SARS outbreak. So we can come up with a treatment, either vaccine or treatment, very soon in the winter, before the winter. So, but we have a better technology called single-cell sequencing that is much quicker to get the antibody from patients. So as soon as the disease comes to United States, Alabama, we work with HudsonAlpha Institute, Dr. Rick Meyer, and we work with Huntsville Hospital. We get very supportive from up and down, all the people, from Dr. Jeff Sands, Joe Campbell, and Robert Chappell, especially Dr. Ali Hassan, who's an infectious disease doc, and we worked previously and write publications before. But this time we try to learn from patients' immune system to fight the virus. And the nurse is very helpful. Gretchen Broadway helped us find all these patients and chasing them down, getting their blood every the other few days. And so we got very successful development on the treatment side. On the diagnostic side, we identified over these past 30 years, every time there's an outbreak, we join the fight, but we do something, but it's not good enough. The reason not good enough is we've been developing technologies for healthcare. Actually, it's for sick care. We are taking care of individual patients, but ignore public health altogether. And when COVID outbreak happens, we are surprised by the volume, the tests needed. We have a shortage of all the reagents, even pipette tips. So we developed here in Huntsville a cough DX. Instead of taking the painful swabs, we cough into a cup, and which is pre-treated, preserve the sample, and come to the lab. We only need to add water and directly go to do molecular diagnosis without the complicated extraction step, which is creating the shortage and the blockade and the bottleneck. So we developed these, again work with Huntsville Hospital. We did a clinical study. We did a side-by-side comparison between swab and cough. Not only the cough is easier to collect, easier to transfer, it is also the best sample to get. The reason other people didn't get it is because the swab is being around for hundreds of years. We've been using it to put into a buffer to ship it to the lab, and then we can culture them, to grow them up. But with molecular diagnostic, we no longer need to grow them up. We need a dead genome. And that's what we are getting with this technology. We also have a barcode on each one of the cup, unique barcode. We developed a mobile app, so you scan the barcode, put in your information, and then you get a report back to you. Or your employer's HR department get a report, or public health, and for contact tracing, for quarantine enforcement. If you are test negative, you can use this like a passport to go travel, to buy airline tickets. So all that information help processing the sample all the way. And those are already built in the technology from the beginning. So we are going to roll out these very soon. Here in Huntsville will be the world class and help the local community and worldwide to fight this disease. So thank you very much. I hope we'll see you again next year and without this social distance. And I would like to introduce Dr. Jeff Sands to be the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Jeff Sams, the Chief Operating Officer for the Huntsville Hospital Health System. Our hospital is thrilled to partner with HudsonAlpha to address global problems like COVID-19. The Huntsville community is so fortunate to have the scientists and explorers from HudsonAlpha trying to solve the world's greatest problems. It's never been more important. We are delighted to partner with Dr. Jin Han and HudsonAlpha to collect samples of active COVID-19 patients to inform the cutting-edge research at the Institute. We are deeply grateful of this collaboration and hope it leads to many future endeavors. Thank you, Dr. Han, for helping make this possible. We also appreciate any of you who donated your dinner tonight to our staff. They've probably already enjoyed it, and we appreciate that generous gesture. Thank you very much. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening.
Hi, I'm Danny Wyndham, HudsonAlpha's Chief Operating Officer, and I would like to thank you for being with us tonight. Hope you found tonight's program being informative, and I commend you for sticking around till the very end. If you were one of our sponsors, I'd like to thank you for sticking with us as we postponed the event and reformatted the event. I'd like to thank Huntsville Hospital, Jeff Sams, David Spillers, and the entire staff there for their collaboration to help find a therapy for COVID-19 in conjunction with HudsonAlpha and iRepertoire. I'd also like to thank all the frontline workers and the essential workers who get up every day and go out into a scary world so that our community can continue to move forward. If you were one of the ones that donated a meal to the frontline workers tonight, thank you. You've enabled the delivery of over 300 meals to healthcare frontline workers in Huntsville and Madison. Tonight you've heard about some amazing work going on across the campus of HudsonAlpha. It's hard to believe that the projects that are COVID-related that Rick mentioned didn't even exist 7 months ago. It's a validation of the public-private partnership structure of HudsonAlpha, but also a testament to just how nimble and responsive these organizations can be. This community has been incredibly supportive of HudsonAlpha, and for that, we're very grateful. While HudsonAlpha has been more fortunate than many organizations in our community, we've been impacted by the coronavirus as well. It's impacted our ability to do our job. It's impacted our ability to bill against grants. But it's strengthened our resolve to do our job, and it's motivated us to make a difference in combating this crisis. So if you'd like to support the efforts across our campus to combat COVID, please go to HudsonAlpha.org/COVID-19 to make a donation. Or you may mail your gift to 601 Genome Way, Huntsville, Alabama, 35806. In closing, I would like to thank the advancement and communication teams here at HudsonAlpha for their efforts in planning and promoting and producing this event. I'd like to thank each of you for your ongoing support of HudsonAlpha. I hope that you'll continue to support our efforts in the future, and if you do, we'll commit to you that we'll be good stewards of everything that you give. With that, we're concluding our presentation tonight. Please stay safe, enjoy the rest of your evening, and remember, when you're out and about, wear a mask. Good night.